really matter if you look at the camera. Okay.
All right.
So, hello. This is my Aunt Candy. I'm visiting her in Portland, Oregon. So for the first question, tell me about the person who has the greatest influence on your life and what lessons did they teach you?
Wow. I think both mom and dad would be the ones that first come to mind, and they both sort of taught me different things. Do you want me to try to do a quick?
Yeah, like in
Okay.
depth.
Well, I'll start with Dad. He had just come from World War II, and within a year had his first child after being gone for 3.5 years, doing most of the major invasions, North African, Sicily, Bridge of Remagen. These aren't necessarily in chronological order. D-Day. So I think he had a lot of the war horrors still in the back of his head, but he didn't talk about it very much. But I think it made him really appreciative of being back home in Tillamook, Oregon, and being back with his wife, because I think they were married 2 weeks, and then he was gone for almost 3.5 years during the war. So then he came back, and he and Mom had 5 kids in 6 years. I was the oldest, and born almost a year after he returned to Tillamook. So I'm giving you some of this background because I think it really affected him and made him really positive, actually, about being home. And I remember he worked for the newspaper, the Tillamook Headlight Herald, and I just remember him being really positive and doing really fun things with each of us. He loved to sing, and so he encouraged all of us to sing. We'd sing in the car wherever we went. He played tennis with us. He would play with us in the backyard. I mean, he was just really a great influence in terms of being a father that I knew I could always count on, and I just adored him. And he always told me I could do whatever I wanted to do, which was really positive. And Mom came from Dad was an only child. Mom had a brother, and she was very loving and very domestic. She had majored in art in college, whereas Dad was majoring in journalism. And she was really artistic, and I didn't really know what that meant at that young age, but I can remember how she made the slip covers for all of the sofas, and she wallpapered. She made our bedrooms special. She made a dressing table for me. I remember using power equipment, which Dad was not very handy with that sort of thing, but Mom really was. So she gave me this sense of being creative and appreciating art.
So is that why do you think that you like art now and how you decorated?
I think probably so. I was always interested in it as a little kid, and I remember we discovered some drawings. She'd done a life drawing class at U of O, and we were all like, maybe I was 6 years old, and there were nude drawings, and we were all just shocked, Mom, what were you doing? And she explained how the human body was beautiful, and it was part of learning about art, and she had some art books that I used to look at as a kid. And not that I'm comparing myself with any great artist by any means, but it certainly made me appreciative of art. And she made doll clothes for all of I think I was too old to notice. She made me some when I was little, but I remember her doing entire wardrobes for Lauryn and Maris, the 2 youngest girls. And so that taught me somewhat about design and clothes. And she was just really very good with that.
Oh. All right. So, let's see. Oh, so your grandparents, were you close with them at all?
I was very close with all 4 of them, and I was really lucky because most of the time all 4 of them lived in Tillamook or very close to our house. There was a time when Mom's parents lived elsewhere, when Grandpa had jobs that took him away from Tillamook. But I spent a lot of time with him on weekends, and I just adored the time with him. Grandma Flo and Grandpa Hank had a boat moorage, and it was right on the river, and they would take us swimming, and they would take us fishing, and Grandma taught all of us how to swim, taking us to one of the areas that had kind of tidal pools off of the bay. And I remember once she found an old rusty box when she was out fishing with Grandpa, and she filled it up with pennies and buried it and then made a map and told us that she found this buried pirate treasure, and so all 5 of us were out. So it was really, I was very close to both of them. Grandpa Hank sang and played the guitar, and he was just wonderful. And then Grandma Elsie and Grandpa Clarence had different things that they brought to my life. Grandma Elsie loved to garden, and so she gave me a lifetime appreciation of growing things, both edible things and flowers. Although Grandpa Hank had a garden too, and that was Dad's father. So both of those things were always a part of my life. And Grandma Elsie crocheted, and she was a wonderful cook, made homemade bread and things like that. That I sort of developed a love of cooking from her. So yeah, I was really close to all 4 of them.
Tillamook is a small town, right?
Yes, at the time I think was something like 2,000 people.
Okay, so your school, was it in Tillamook, or did you have to drive? Like, how did you commute?
It was right in downtown Tillamook, and we lived in downtown Tillamook. Dad became mayor fairly young in his lifetime, and they had a provision that you had to live in the city limits of Tillamook, because there is a lot of rural area there. Lots of farms, dairy farms, which is what it's famous for, but no one in my family, at least in the generations I knew, were dairy farmers, although Grandma Flo and Grandpa Hank did keep a cow, which they milked and we would get fresh milk from that. So I went to grade school, actually across the street from our house was the grade school, Wilson School, and kindergarten was at a church in downtown Tillamook. Middle school, well, they called it just junior high then, was downtown. We moved before I went to high school. Had I gone to high school, I would have had to take a bus because it was in the eastern part of Tillamook. But Tillamook was actually large enough to have several grade schools. But they only had the one high school.
I see.
And I think they had 2 junior highs as well.
So you didn't go to high school in Tillamook?
No, we moved to Portland when I was in the middle of the 8th grade. Okay. So I went to high school at Sunset High School here.
Do you remember any interesting memories from high school?
Yes, it was a big deal because, as I said, we moved in the middle of the 8th grade, and it seemed like I had moved to New York City compared to Tillamook. Everybody seemed so sophisticated, and they had just finished building the Sunset Highway. Before that, if you came to Portland, you had to drive this very circuitous route through, I'm probably not getting the order right, but Forest Grove and Hillsborough and Aloha and Tigard, or Beaverton and Tigard, and then to get to Portland. But they opened the Sunset Highway, and it was like this supposedly fast shot. It still took, at least an hour and a half to 2 hours to drive from Tillamook. And Sunset High School was a brand new school. I was the first class to go all 4 years there. When they opened it in 1960, they moved 2 classes from Beaverton High School, the junior and seniors, and then I started as a freshman that same year, so I went all 4 years there. But it had fireplaces in the lobby, which just seemed incredibly modern, and I really loved it. But it was kind of out in the country then, since it was now. Of course, it's all built around big suburbs. It's still there. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went to my 60th high school reunion. I went to every single high school reunion after I graduated. And that was in 2000, what would it be? Oh, dear. Let's see, I graduated in 1964. So, no, maybe it was my 50th.
Friends with anyone that you went to high school with?
Yes, I see my friend Shelley almost every week. We met when we were both 15. She moved in down the street, and then there are several other friends that I see occasionally, and we exchange Christmas cards and call each other every now and then.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. So during the summertime, when you were off from school, is there anything in particular that you like to do? Did you have any hobbies, or did you have a job during the summer?
Yes, because Dad was director of OMSI. All of us worked at OMSI. At first he would pay us $1 out of his own pocket. Of course, I was in the 8th grade, so that seemed like a fair wage. As I was in high school, I worked there doing everything from manning the admission desk as people came in, to running the Plastic Lady show, to Playtime with the Pets, where I would pick up boa constrictors and
Ooh.
show that they were harmless and let them wrap around my neck, which I had to learn to do this. It was not love at first sight with snakes, let me tell you. But I did that, and then Scott and I started singing together and making money for college when we were in high school. We sang for private parties and occasional things at school. We didn't get paid for the things at school, of course, but I did a lot of theater in school, and then I did civic theater plays when I was a senior in high school. And I loved doing that. I always loved to read, so that was a big hobby. But I was busy a lot, did a lot of extracurricular activities all through high school.
So with the singing that you did, or in involved with plays and stuff like that, did you want to be like a professional actress or a singer?
I don't think particularly. Maybe because I came from a small town. Not that you can have this dream from a small town, but it didn't. I don't remember particularly thinking that. I just thought that I would go on to college and have a nice life. I wasn't dreaming big. I did take drama in college for a while, and I continued the singing for years until Scott moved to Switzerland and kind of broke up the act.
I see. So what did you want, when going into college, what career did you want to pursue in?
You know, I majored in English literature, and I really wasn't sure. I thought maybe teaching, although I didn't take education classes. That was still kind of in the day and age where you thought that you went to college, you got married. Some women worked, but it wasn't as common. Mom did work part-time helping Dad with his newspaper. He had a shopper newspaper that was published in Tillamook, and he was also mayor, and he did a lot of early community public relations kinds of things. So I guess I just kind of thought that's what I would do. And then when we moved to Portland, of course, that was a different arena, and you saw a lot more, and I had just some wonderful experiences with Scott singing for, usually we were hired by wealthy people who would hire us to sing at their private parties because we could sing everything from old-fashioned, World War I songs to whoever was popular at the time, like the Beatles. I can't even think of some of the other ones, but we had quite a repertoire. We sang in a restaurant after school in high school. It was a Japanese restaurant, and we learned to sing Japanese because the waitresses wrote the lyrics out phonetically on the back of placemats. Unfortunately, I discovered later on that just by the slightest inflection, you could change a word from, say, love to shovel, and who knows what we were really singing, but people would come back to hear us. They found it kind of interesting, I guess, that these two Caucasian high school kids were singing a few songs in Japanese. But I got off subject there. I think I didn't have a real picture in my mind about what I would do, but I assumed it might include writing, which in fact it did, because I ended up in advertising, as you know, as a copywriter and a creative director. So all the things that I'd done kind of funneled into that career. But they didn't offer advertising classes that I know of in those days when I was in college, and certainly not in high school, although I'm sure now you can probably take marketing and some things like that.
So what age were you during this time when you would sing with Uncle Scotty?
With Scott, we started singing because we'd always sung together as a family, doing some early things, parties for people when I was 15, 16.
Oh, wow.
And then it continued on through college.
So if you could go back in time and relive your teenage years, would you? Or
only if I could do it with what I know now. I mean, I really was fortunate to have some fantastic experiries. Sometime I will show you the scrapbook of pictures taken of us when we were singing and newspaper articles about us. It was very fun. It really was. And we sang together at Oregon State when we were both there at the same time for, I think we were both there together only for 1 year, but we would sing for like student transfer dinners and exchange student mixers and things like that.
I'm surprised you guys didn't have stage fright. Personally, I'd be scared to sing in front of
Well, by that time I was over it, I guess, because I'd done theater in high school. I did a play that was singing and dancing, and so I was kind of over it by then.
Yeah. All right. So, about like our family heritage, was there any traditions that was started a while ago that have been passed down?
Well, the singing, definitely, because I think I told you that Grandpa Hank, Dad's father, used to sing. This was the story that I heard. He sang all over Tillamook, and he was in plays that would be performed. I have at least one old program where he played a baseball player. It lists his name in this. It had a funny name that sounded like the early 1900s. And apparently he used to travel to Portland to sing before silent movies would be played in some of the old theaters here. They'd have like a warm-up act, and somebody would play the piano or the organ, and someone would sing. And like Al Jolson used to come to Portland, and Grandpa Hank. Not that he was in the same league as some of these more famous people by any means, but he was a local singer who was well known. So he taught my dad to sing, and Dad also sang through college. I think you saw some of the old transcripts from college where he sang. And so we'd sing in the car every place we went in the car. We'd sing at home. We were all given ukuleles when we were little. We all took piano lessons. Then there was a horrible time when someone was taking tuba lessons, I think, and people would call and go, "What's going on at your house?" And Scott was playing the trumpet, and somebody was playing the tuba, and I think Kevin played the accordion for a while. It could be pretty wild, but that was definitely passed on. I think the love of gardening, Dad liked it because his dad did, and
Aunt Lolo gardens.
Yep. All of us liked plants. Grandma Flo was very creative. I mentioned that she grew up in, I probably didn't mention, she grew up in Cottage Grove, but her family was very artistic, and I found, I have somewhere that I can show you a really delicate, like a watercolor that she did, and she wrote, she was a published poet. She's the one I told you won the Carnegie Medal, jumping in the river to save a woman's life who'd gone into the water in her car. And she was going to use that to publish a novel that she started writing. I think she started writing it when Dad was a little boy, and she worked on it for years, but it was never published because the publisher at that time wanted her to change some of the things. She had a lot of it as factual, although I think it would have been sort of like a memoir or autobiography, but they wanted to turn it more into a fictional story. So she didn't want to. No. So all of those things, the appreciation of writing, all of us were prolific readers, loved to read. All of us would join these contests in the summer that the library had in Tillamook where they'd have a theme and you'd get some little sticker for however many books you read, and we'd always read more than you had to.
Oh yeah, I remember we had to do something similar, like a reading. I don't know, remember you would take me downtown during the summer.
And I think it's passed on to you because you enjoy reading, and I think you certainly have a real creative bent and artistic bent, and you like music, and you're talented in dancing and singing and all of those things.
And I just recently got a guitar, and I'm learning how to play.
Yay!
So
that's I have one in the bedroom that you can play anytime you're here. It's in the case in there. So.
And also with my mom, I don't know if she was involved in any drama or singing professionally, but I know that she does sing, and she's good at it, even though she would probably say different. But
well, she was a fabulous actress. I still remember just being absolutely blown away when I went to hear her. I think the play was called Crimes of the Heart, but I could be wrong. And it was at PCC, and she had the lead in it, and it was one of these plays where she carried the whole thing because it was almost, she was in every scene, and it was very intense. She played a nurse, I think it was Vietnam, and it was really, she was just fabulous, and she was 19 maybe.
She never told me that she did.
Yeah, it was, and when she was a Junior Rose Festival princess. Now that would have given me stage fright when she got up in front of several thousand people and gave her speech, and I wasn't here. She had to give a speech. I was living in Cleveland then, but I saw the speech she gave before she was selected actually as the Junior Rose Festival princess, and I was just amazed. She was so poised. She didn't act nervous at all. It was like she got up and spoke in front of several thousand people all the time.
What did she have to give a speech about?
Oh, I think it was why she wanted to be a Rose Festival princess.
Oh,
And
okay.
I've only seen it once. It was a little, somebody sent me the video at one point. I think
Yeah.
Grandma or Lori would still have it now. It must be somewhere in the mess of things on that bookshelf. It's now packed up. But
Yeah.
there is a videotape of her doing that.
Well, it seems like in our family history we have a lot of artistic people.
It's really true. People who like to read, who like to write.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Kevin was writing a novel for quite a while.
Yeah.
And Uncle Scott was doing translations from Italian,
Oh, wow.
or to Italian, I'm sorry, from English scripts. And so that involved not just doing it word for word, but you had to have a sense of how to use a word that was going to make this sound
Mm-hmm.
artistic and interesting. And he was doing that right actually in the hospital
Yeah.
up until the time he died. He was still working on some jobs he had for translating. And he wrote
Wow.
music in Switzerland. I just heard
Wrote music.
he wrote music and sang. I'll play one for you later today, but Loli sent me. He sort of sounds like Frank Sinatra. He was very young. It was when he first moved over there. He wrote back on, I hate to say it, cigarettes. He wrote one for Marotti, which I guess is some Italian brand of cigarettes that he wrote when he first moved over there. And he's singing that. It used to come up in movie theaters when they would show
wow.
cigarette commercials in theaters. He would be horrified now, but
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we had this talk. I found a lot of things that I did not know about our family history.
Good. It was fun.
Yes, it was. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye. Hopefully it was still recording.